what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of All About Nothing. We're back again with another episode, and we're bringing back my man Joe. What's going on, Joe?
Not much. Just glad to be back here, man.
Hey, happy to have you back, man. This is a super exciting episode. Last time we did an All About Eras, the Middle Ages. I had a great time, and we're back with All About Eras, the Aztec Empire.
Yes, sir.
So at first it was gonna be like Aztecs and aliens, but I couldn't find any connection with aliens and
No.
the Aztec Empire, and I just
You
first and
couldn't really
foremost I was
plug
against
in.
it too, though.
Yeah, it just didn't really fit. And like, I know it's like on like ancient aliens and stuff, but like when you look at it and it's like, I can't really see them doing that. But
Yeah.
like, you can maybe see like Egyptian stuff, like kind of like looking to like more cosmic stuff. But like, I feel like Aztecs were more like on the ground and like
Yeah, I
sun
mean,
and moon type stuff.
See, the reason why I disagree with that is because in their schools they mainly focused on math and astrology.
Yeah.
So I feel like to me it gives them that capability of being able to build large structures like that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the reason why I feel like that just doesn't. I feel like it's like I'm against it with Egypt too, man.
Yeah.
Like with Egypt, 100%. I'm sure they're even more advanced,
Right.
like they're even more smart and like
They're very
such
complex,
smart. Yeah.
They're
So
still trying to like figure things out about them to this day. They're like,
yeah,
what the
exactly.
hell?
And I feel like people think that it's like, oh, just the slaves built it and stuff. Like, no, they're
Yeah.
like the highest of the highest people.
We're
Were
saying like vibrations and stuff like that. I don't know, it's
exactly,
crazy.
bro.
But freaking-
Actually, so I saw a video about the Aztecs because I was looking up Aztecs on my TikTok and
Yeah.
stuff. So it was all coming up, and so
It
I
just,
was.
after you look it up once, it just pops up all
Mhm.
over your feed, and you're like, all right.
I don't mind it though.
It just helps your research. Though.
It was cool, yeah. I really got into it, but they have this thing where they're on tour, and the tour guide took them to like the main temple on the bottom of it, and he was like, "Okay, wait here." So he ran like 100 feet away, 150 feet away, and he whispered like, "Oh, can you hear me?" And they heard him perfectly. Like the fact that they had that built up,
That
in
architectural style.
yes, bro.
Crazy.
And that was used to like whenever they would have like speeches or the king would go out there and like announce
Yeah.
the sacrifices and stuff.
That's crazy.
It's just like super intelligent.
Yeah.
It's like so awesome.
Imagine
man.
the concerts there, bro. It's just like,
The concerts must have went crazy, man.
they need to like bring the concerts over there. It's like reuse those acoustics.
Yeah, man. It's that's just wild, man.
They're just that, like technologically advanced that they're just like, you know what? We need to make our hallway like this, and it needs to echo this much so they can hear my voice. And it's like, all right, I got you, bro. I got you.
And they did it, man. They did it.
That's wild.
That
Never heard of
is-
that once.
It's super. I don't know, man. I think I really enjoyed, like getting into this research about the Aztecs.
Yeah,
It
there's
was very
definitely a lot like
eye-opening.
a slept on like civilization, because like I feel like Egypt is like the most talked about or like medieval times, but like Aztecs are like, oh, they're just kind of the primitive civilization. But then when you
Yeah.
look back at it, you're like, they kind of weren't. They were like on top of their game,
And I feel like they were sort of like the underdog too, because like their
Yeah.
story of where they got to the kingdom and to like the empire, it's like it's a long journey. Like they did a lot. They had to, put up with a lot for a little bit until they played their
Yeah.
part correctly.
Definitely.
And we're definitely gonna get into all of that, But honestly, to start off with is just like, when did it start? How long did it last? So they sort of began around the year 1300
Yeah.
up until like 1521. So they lasted
That's
roughly
pretty good.
like
Wow.
200 years.
Yeah.
But the thing about them is that there's like 4 different eras,
Yeah.
like sub eras between that big era.
Mhm.
So like it's not just straight they went to the empire and then they got conquered by the Spaniards.
Yeah.
They had certain areas, and those are the pre-imperial Latok. Yeah, that was the first one, which was 1375 to 1427. And actually, I'm gonna first start off with this. There are a lot of names and like
Oh yeah.
just words that are very, very, very difficult to
We're gonna butcher a lot of names here.
yeah. So I think I speak for the both of us that we want to apologize beforehand if we say anything wrong.
Yeah.
But we are gonna try our best. I've got a few names down.
Nice, nice.
But still, it's just thinking about it
Yeah.
too much. It's just
It's a lot. It's actually really the most like tongue twisting names compared to like other countries if you think
Yeah.
about it. Like
Yeah.
even Russian, you can kind of pronounce that, but like this, you're like, I can't.
I-
Even. It's all in the tongue, basically.
It really is.
Yeah,
And it's
crazy.
super interesting because still 3 million people to this day
Yeah.
use that language.
I forgot what it's called. Like Noati. See, I'm already messing.
It
up.
was
Naul.
yeah,
Something like that.
the Nahuatl
Yeah.
Nahuatl language.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the language they would speak, and they actually called themselves Mexica.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What's crazy about that is because they're saying that there's 68 national languages in Mexico, but that is being the most common language there.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That it's still spoken to this day, even
Yeah.
though it's
Super
ancient.
interesting.
That's wild.
So, and then after 1427, that's when the Aztec Empire, that era came about until 1427 to 1521. And that's sort of what we're going to go through, just sort of like the pre and then the Aztec Empire, because I feel like if we did the other two, it would just be like a super duper long episode. So that should probably be its own sort of what like the Spaniards did. I did throw a little bit at the end of what the Spaniards changed, and they did change something big that I do not agree with, but that's just how they are. But
Bro.
you know, we'll just have to wait to see what it is. But after that is going to be the colonial period, which was 1525 to 1536, and then after that is going to be the resumption of dynasty rule, which is 1538 to 1565. So those are the 4 different eras within that. But we're going to go through the first pre-imperial and then the Aztec Empire. And the thing that's really sucks though is that like most of their codexes to their history was destroyed. You know,
Yeah.
the first time being from in 1430 by Itzcoatl. That's one of their kings, the 4th emperor, actually. He ruled 1427 or 1428 up until 1440. And he ordered all of the photographs of the codexes destroyed. And then there were some codexes that were able to be like saved from that, where later king saved. But whenever the Spaniards came, they just burned it all.
Yeah, that seems to be a pattern with history. You know, they don't like other people's stuff, so they
love to
tear it down, like
Yeah.
flex.
And there's again propaganda somewhere in my research where we're gonna go through where it's like all these things that they thought of the Spaniards, but we're just wrong. So again, we're gonna have to wait to see what that is.
Definitely.
Yeah. So again, all of that burning of their libraries and their books and codexes, it left their origins of the Aztecs like a mystery, some sort of like myth or legend, you know?
Yeah.
And then overall, like sort of what they ruled over, they ruled over about like 80,000 square miles throughout the central Mexico.
That whole like middle chunk is crazy.
Yes, from the Gulf Coast to the Pacific Ocean and south to what is now Guatemala.
Yeah.
Like they owned all of that.
I wish we could like show a picture of just that little middle part where they're just like, that's theirs. Like, damn.
Yeah, man, it's actually insane.
And they didn't even have like any advanced stuff like all the other stuff. That was just all their fucking wits or some shit.
Yeah. Now we're looking at a picture at it, and can you see well? Can you see?
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of territory, dude.
And that's just with their freaking little like, that's just them on their feet with horses and those little weapons that they made.
And they were still like going out and expanding, you know. So they never stopped. There were some kings that were my favorite who, you know, actually focused on building architecture and getting, you know, all of these, you know, things to make the town better. I know one of the kings actually made blueprints on how to make a good, sufficient town and roads and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So,
And like, what if one of the expansions of that was also the marriage alliance thingy too? Like, they were just going at it, like they're like, take my daughter, and
yeah,
then like
yeah.
before then, like everybody knew everybody, and just like it
The tri-
expanded like that.
It's
Like,
exactly what happened with the Triple Alliance. Some of them they were mainly connected by marriage.
yeah, and it's like that's kind of one way to expand really fast, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy.
But okay, we're gonna start off with sort of like the beginning of the Aztec times, and that is said to is that the people originated from an island named Aslam, sorry, which is also what the name Aztec means, is people of Aslam. So I guess if that's where they originated,
Yeah.
they probably, or I don't know if it's like for sure that they originated there, but I would understand why they would think that because of what their name means, you know.
Yeah.
But eventually, their god Huitzilopochtli, the sun god, ordered them to leave Aslam, who migrated to a new world of paradise, and they would receive good weather, and they would receive good harvest, and they would be able to just be it'll be their paradise, you know.
Mhm.
So these people following what their god, again, Huitzilopochtli, that's one of the names that I was able to get down.
That's nice.
It took their people decades to go and find this. They would settle for a place for a couple years, 50 years, 100 years, and they would keep on going. They would move. So they were going place to place. And during their journey, they actually found a place named Tolan, where a priest built an altar. An altar. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sounds off.
Altar.
In honor of their god, who then advised his priests to go down a hill in an area of meadows to construct a dam to block any water going out, creating the first artificial lagoon recorded in Mesoamerican history.
Ooh.
They literally just pulled up until Talan and was like, I'm going to build this dam.
Bet, you know?
Yeah. That's just that's and the first one in Mesoamerican history, Aztecs just in their journey.
Yeah.
So this actually caused many animals to come to the lagoon. You know, there was a lot of life coming. There was like ducks, hummingbirds, fish, and after finding this land and their abundance of food, they lived sort of like just a kept down life. They didn't want to really bother anybody. They're just focused on their agriculture, you know? And at this point, they no longer really served their god. They didn't really they didn't have any honor for their sun god. So
Yeah.
they advised their priests to stay there, and they're saying this is a good place for us. Like we want to go. I mean, we want to stay here. Like why would we keep going if this is a good place? We're getting all this agriculture.
Yeah.
And later that day or that night, loud thunder, just lightning strikes. It was raining bad, and after so later that day, or I guess the next day, what's it called? Those who forsake the sun god and like stopped believing and wanted to stay there were all found dead. Their chests were found open and their hearts were ripped out.
Damn.
Yeah. So this made the priests believe that the sun god wanted human sacrifices with their hearts ripped out of their bodies to appease his anger. And that's sort of where they got their idea of sacrificing the way that they sacrifice, is because that's what that happened that night. They thought that that's what the sun god wanted, you know?
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
They're like, we're just trying to follow the universe. But then at the same time, they're like, no, we're just doing genocide.
Yeah, literally, bro.
That is crazy.
So they continued their journey until they arrived at Texcoco, where we finally got some of like actual historical records of the Aztecs, and that's what we're able to find out what we are able to in Texcoco. And whenever they arrived, they found a civilization which was way more sophisticated than their cities that they've ever had. They had a feudal system, and if y'all have listened to the Middle Age episode, you would know what feudalism is. We sort of brought that up on that last episode, but it's basically where the king or the crown of any sort owns a large amount of land, and the people who stay there, which are usually the commoners, have to pay a tax of some sort
Right.
to the king, or some sort of any currency towards them. And
That little pyramid scheme that
yeah,
they got going
and
on.
basically in return, the king will protect them with their army, and just protect them overall. But they usually take
That's
that
crazy.
in what's it called, for advantage. So that's what they found in Texcoco, the civilization that had that sort of system,
Mhm.
and it had also large temples that usually overlooked what was already there before the Aztec civilization arose. So they already had sort of like those pyramids of some sort, the
Yeah.
temples, um, and so some cities were independent, where others paid a fee, like taxes, to a bigger kingdom in exchange for protection. So when they tried to settle this land in Texcoco, the locals were displeased because they practiced a new thing called land ownership.
Hmm.
And that was sort of a new concept to the Aztecs. So the Aztecs were just like,
What is this?
what is going on? Like, no, we're taking it. And they're like, nope. Look at the papers. um,
That's wild.
so, in advice from their sun god, the Aztecs actually constructed a town. They erected solid walls and elected a warrior to become their leader, which was because a precedent for all future leaders. It became a precedent for all future leaders, and usually what they would find is a big warrior, somebody who was strong, um, and that would usually help them in their expansion overall, but also could cause, I would say, the demise of them is the reason why they picked them.
Oh yeah.
It was completely different from Europe, because Europe stayed within royal family,
Yeah.
stayed within blood. If it meant sleeping with your cousins,
And they were
like,
more like fat little like inbred people and stuff.
yeah.
And you got like the strongest people over here.
Over
It's
here, yeah, exactly. So
crazy.
the way that they chose were actually a way of democracy, and they voted who was the strongest as well, smart in battlefield, and so after constructing the town, putting up those walls, and then finding a leader, this warrior leader, I forgot the name. I don't think I got the name, but it's just warrior leader.
Yeah.
That's what we know him by.
Okay.
They ordered the people of Aztec to craft weapons to defend themselves, evolving from a religious, agricultural society to a militarily aggressive society. That's
Okay.
sort of where they changed there, because they sort of came up in Texcoco and they're like, okay, well, I mean, these people are probably gonna, fight and kill us. Seeing how much they have weapons.
Yeah.
They're like, we got to do the same thing.
Damn.
We've got to start protecting ourselves. So they taught men, women, and children to use all sorts of weapons to defend their tribe from their neighbors. They fought many battles with the kingdoms surrounding the Aztec tribe, until eventually the surrounding neighbors decided to kill all the Aztecs in an ambush.
Damn.
But the Aztecs ambushed the ambushers. They already knew that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
So they ambushed the ambushers, ripping out their beating hearts and offering it to the sun god.
Yeah. As
So-
they should.
They were like, at this point, I'm not staying here no more. It's too violent. They're trying to ambush us. We barely made it out. We're going to have to go somewhere else. We have to take advice from the sun god. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So they left. Whenever they found the next place that they found, they then sent a diplomatic envoy to the next king, whose land they wanted to settle, which was ruled by the kingdom of Coahucan. Hold on, let me try that one more time.
Yeah, I think you got that about right.
Yeah, Coahucan.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was sort of like the empire that was there before Aztecs. This was where they had that big emperor who owned separate cities. Again, some of other cities were independent. they taxed people. So uh, they asked the king for land, which was given, and which was also then given to them was an hospital piece of land. They literally got shit on.
Yeah.
They weren't able to get really much. They had barren soil, poisonous animals, and then I remember I literally just said where the difference. This is just a quick fact, first fact of the episode, but the difference between poisonous and venomous is that poisonous is created outside of the body, whereas venomous is created inside the body. So that's just your first fact of the episode, but. They actually eventually managed to build what's it called, a town. Right. They were able to make fertile soil and settle into a life of agriculture. But the sun god, who actually changed along the years to the sun god, but also the god of war, and the god of human sacrifices.
Damn.
That is terrifying.
Why would there be a whole god of that? It's like
that must be that they must have done it so much. It became.
They literally manifested it is what they did. They're just like we need to make ourselves look good, so let's just make a whole god about it, so that way we don't feel bad about it. Basically.
No, yeah, basically, because that's how they. That's what made them what they were. Yeah. They probably did that to make them look stronger to their neighbors. That's what it was all about. That's how they chose their king, so now that different sun god, who is now the god of war, the sun god, and the god of human sacrifices, he didn't like the peaceful quiet. He didn't like the peace. Of course. So he ordered his people to attack the Kuahukan overlords. And the people asked the king of Kuahukan for his daughter's hand of marriage to marry the sun god. Yeah. So they took the princess to the temple. The god agreed, yeah. So they took the princess to the temple to the future husband. The priest took her clothes off and then cut open her chest and then took her heart out and giving it up to the sun god. So later that night, the same priest appeared before the king wearing the skin of his daughters, which enraged the king. Why would you do that?
That is like a flex on a different level. They're just like, hey, guess what? Like, we're going to take over your spot and we killed your daughter. And it's
like, we're chilling, we're peaceful. I'm going to kill your daughter. No, first of all, I'm going to wear your daughter right in front of you. That is so crazy. So at this point, the king is so enraged. He ordered. It's a prank, bro. He's like, wait, it's a prank. Wait, hold on. Filming right there. Look over there, king.
There's hidden cameras over there,
bro. Nah, so obviously the king is so enraged. He ordered all of his people who were there for the wedding to kill every last Aztec. What the fuck? Every last Aztec. Damn. So it was such a defeat for the Aztecs. Whatever remained of their people fled to an island in the middle of Texcoco. So it was, let's see.
So they were just literally migrating everywhere. Like, yeah. Wherever the sun took them, basically. Yeah. That's crazy. Like, most people would think that, like, they were just in the Mexico area, but, like, no, they were everywhere.
Yeah, no, really. They really fled from place to place. But, here, look, check this out. This is Lake Texcoco right here, and they fled right here. And then this right here was that big kingdom that they had to go against that we're going to talk about right now. So just to give you a little,
they had a lot.
I guess, overview, yeah. Yeah. So again, yes, they fled to an island in the middle of Texcoco right here, and the sun god assuring them that they are near their destination, which was their homeland. So he told them to look for a rock with a cactus on top where an eagle is nesting and devouring a serpent on top of the cactus.
Talking about Mexico.
Yes, which is the familiar scene that we see on their flag, which was super cool. I looked it up. I was like, okay, let me see what this looks like. And I was like,
wait a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
You think like they like predicted what the Mexican flag would look like.
So cool.
Yeah. They're just that like advanced. They're like, oh my God.
Yeah. So, they looked for this destination, and after some time, they finally found it. They found a rock with, a cactus with a hawk, or what was it? An eagle on top of it eating a serpent. They found that, and they named their city Tenochtitlan, meaning a place of the cactus on the rock. So their long journey ended in 1325.
Nice.
Finally finding their home of Tenochtitlan, which would one day become the main place and main area of their homeland, with great buildings on it. So sort of the creation of their kingdom, what happens then, because they didn't automatically become this empire. The people of the Aztecs were actually surrounded by 3 big kingdoms when they finally found their homeland, who all had smaller cities, whereas the Aztec people had their one little piece of land. So they were only just a small ant in a big, in a big world. They really didn't have much resources to stand up against those other kingdoms. They then decided to stay low for a while, just like anybody would, honestly. Like, I would want to stay low and just gather up my resources, build myself up,
or observe from afar, and then like
observe, see what they type of people they are. So that's what they did for a little. They started trading with the neighboring kingdoms, which then got the attention of the big king. I messed up earlier. I made a mistake saying that the one of Coahucan was the big king, but that was just some random king somewhere of a city, This was the empire one.
Oh wow.
Main base. It was the capital right here. So the king of, I'm gonna butcher this so bad, Azcapotzalco. Damn, bro.
I can't help you out there. I can't.
Yeah. I'm going to try one more time. Azcapotzalco. Yeah. Azcapotzalco.
What year is this?
So this is around 1325, around that year.
Still the beginning?
Whenever yeah. So what that king decided to do was then, once it got their attention, he's like, why aren't they paying taxes? They need to pay taxes. So they ordered them to pay taxes, which created a toll for the Aztecs, who already had limited resources.
Yeah.
It had a toll on them, which then the Aztecs sent people to the king to help lower the taxes, but that only made the king upset, which then he raised the taxes even higher.
That's crazy.
They needed to pay, making the nobility even struggle to eat. So like at that time they were so broke, so poor. So after this meeting with the king, they're having to pay higher taxes. They realized that they need to modernize their political system in order to keep up with their neighbors. Tribalism simply just wasn't cutting it anymore.
Yeah.
They needed to up their system, better be prepared for stuff like this, especially dealing with kingdoms like that. They needed a king. So then they decided, so who's going to be the king? How are we going to decide who's king? This is all new to us. How is this going to happen? So they wanted the king to be an embodiment of the sun god. They wanted it to be strong, intelligent, and a good warrior. So this criteria usually stayed the same throughout history. So this was the base of it all, how it all started. So they found their first king, which was Acamapichli, in 1375, which then became the kingdom. So he was really all about expanding agriculture.
Yeah.
Enhancing cities, making it livable.
Mm-hmm.
So he then started expanding their streets, their land. They started to experience peace, growth. But as the king grew older, they realized they needed a successor. He wasn't really war hungry, so he lived to be old. They just needed a successor now.
Okay.
But then they were now wondering how are they going to choose it. So he decided to put up an election. This is where democracy sort of came into play. That's where we are introduced to they're having an election. They're voting,
Yeah.
So the next king, who was named Huichilahiro, managed to reduce the taxes by marrying the daughter of the king of the Azcapotzalco, giving them a chance to grow much faster. And the king was very hesitant, but they finally managed to actually be able to marry the daughter and be able to grow. So later on the years, things were all right. They were growing slowly but surely. The king of Azcapotzalco went to war with the neighboring kingdoms, with the Aztecs joining them in the war, conquering Texcoco and Coahucan. So that's where they were able to, with the king though, gather and gain some of that land. So in this war, the king actually Huitzilahiro died and was succeeded by his son Chimalpopoca, which was at 20. So he lacked that experience and that useful advice,
Yeah.
So this was who was actually known for being the grandson of the king Azcapotzalco, the big emperor. He was grandson of him. So he relied on the council for advice. So they took great advantage of him, making him sort of like a puppet. That's one of the things that they did a lot, was trying to manage. Except like the first couple of like kings who actually made a change, they were able to puppet all of the other ones who really lacked intelligence, but were there
just to be the face
strong.
Of the people and stuff. And
So obviously they made him go to the grandfather for favors a lot. And the thing about the Mesoamerican politics is that they revolved around favors and tributes. So that was one thing that was huge in the Mesoamerican culture, was that they would do a lot of favors, or they would tribute trade sort of thing for like respect and stuff. So the council of Azcapotzalco, that council didn't like that they were granting favors. They were just like, your grandson is taking advantage. The Aztecs are growing. They're actually becoming a rival at this point. Like, we shouldn't be out there giving them all of this stuff. They shouldn't be asking us for favors. We're the big people. They need to be paying us. They need to be even asking or trading with us.
Yeah. They got that spark.
Yeah, and usually an overlord would demand stuff like that, not the other way around. So that's what enraged them.
Mm-hmm.
So the council then made up their mind that the Aztecs should be enslaved, they should pay taxes, and their king must die. So after hearing this news, it was said that the king of Azcapotzalco died of anguish. There's no proof of him being murdered, but that's convenient,
Yeah.
It's very convenient. They attempted to destroy the Aztec, but the Aztec people, but not by open war. They sent assassins into the palace, and the king Chimalpopoc was murdered in his sleep. And actually, these assassins murdered almost the entire royal family.
Damn.
Yeah. So they found another king, 1426. And they actually named him Itzcoatl, who is the bastard son of the first Aztec king. So, what he did then, actually, before we get into that, we're gonna go on our first break, and we'll be back and we'll get into, I guess, honestly, the first king who actually did stuff for this temple, for this Aztec Empire, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, we'll be back. All right, and we're back. So, sort of where we left off was that they found another king in 1426, and his name was Itzcoatl, who is the actual bastard son of the first Aztec king. So what he first did as his first thing as a king was that he sent a messenger to the Azcapotzalco for peace, but that was refused. Again, at this point in time, being peaceful sort of was like looked down upon. It was looked as weak. So I guess the king didn't want to seem weak. He wanted to seem strong to his people.
Straight to the point.
So it was refused. So what he then did, that king, was that he formed alliances. He went to Texcoco. He also Telicopam, who have suffered from the grasp of that king. So after that, they formed the Triple Alliance, which a strong military. They're politically and economically were a coalition, which would be the origins of the Aztec Empire as a whole. That's sort of what got them to that.
Huh.
So, after meeting and joining those alliances, they met with the kingdom, Azcapotzalco, in a battle, fighting ferociously with spears, clubs, swords, and bows and arrows. And actually, let me show you some. I think I had some tabs open for that to kind of see what they were sort of fighting with, which was like these sort of clubs with like the rocks on the side.
Oh, yeah. That's got to be the obsidian, right?
I think so. I really think so, which is this hard rock-like surface that they used a lot. Yeah, they used it for sacrifices. They're really big in using stuff like that, and the Aztecs quickly overran them, and they ordered their city and their capital to be burned to the ground, which finally renewed their, I guess you would say, like their independence. So after this, the Aztecs decided, what are they going to do with their allies? Are they going to maintain it? Are they going to leave them alone? Are they going to betray them? Like, what's going to happen? So what they did was, and also, who's going to be taking that land? The Azcapotzalco, So who's taking that land? So all of the big leaders held a meeting, which was to handle these matters diplomatically. So they agreed to maintain their alliance. They decided to share the land, and they were wondering how to rule other kingdoms, which then they agreed. See, they're talk about it, solve it, man. Like, that's great. Like, they had a problem, they talked about it, they solved it. Like,
straight to the point. They were like, all right,
yeah,
whatever.
So they agreed to ultimately let the people run themselves, protecting them from taxes. For taxes, they were able to roam between territories, make like trades between territories that are owned by them. They were able to believe any god that they want, which was really good. That wasn't very common. Yeah, it was not common at all.
You got like all those other people that kill people just for not liking their religion.
Exactly. So they were gaining territory from the south and the north. So the Aztec actually ruled over various states and a bunch of people. They became the dominant force of the Triple Alliance, becoming the Aztec Empire only 14 years after the alliance. So they were growing fast. Itzcoatl was like, he was building.
He's putting in that work.
Yeah, for real. And so after Itzcoatl's death from a disease in 1414, the king made his home like this tribal village to a kingdom, an empire. So this is when he was succeeded by his cousin, Moctezuma I, the first one.
The first one.
Yeah. Wasn't a big fan of any of the Moctezumas, honestly. Itzcoatl was really my guy. He was really my favorite, honestly, because he really made a difference.
1427 to 1440. Like, he was like one of the longer ones too.
Yeah. For real. Most of them, like you said earlier, when you were looking through the kings, like
They're
60
very
days.
short term.
Yeah, 30 days.
It's crazy.
So, what Moctezuma the first did was he spoke with the king of Texcoco to maintain allies, but to show their strength, what they decided to do was they were gonna simulate a war.
Simulate?
Yeah, they were gonna simulate a war, and at the end show their alliance. At the end, to sort of show that they're able to be allies, but like, this is what I got, you know. And it was all staged. It was all staged.
That's like some different type of military tactic right there.
Yeah. So after that, what he decided to do was reduce the military action and push towards renovation. So what he decided was that he was going to start construction of the giant pyramids in the middle of the city. It was going to be 100. I think it was just one pyramid. I'm sorry, 100 meters wide, 80 meters long in length, and 60 meters tall. That is pretty insane, man.
Yeah.
So what he did was that he demanded men and materials from outside territories. So he wasn't like, it wasn't in his territory, it was outside of that. He was demanding this. Like, he was saying, yo, I need this material, send people here now.
No.
So after being refused by one of the cities out there, he sent their armies over there and killing their soldiers and obtaining even more territory. So he was very brutal. Moctezuma set up a universal education, though, for all children, rich or not. So that was a pretty good thing, which was a first in its kind as well. You know, universal education was never a thing at all for that time, you know, especially after, like, the Spaniards really changed it up, too. So, like, that was really different. And I thought that was pretty cool,
right?
You know? It was really awesome.
Gave everybody, like, free will.
Yeah, give them the opportunity to learn and be something, you know?
Yeah.
So what he also did was he set up templates of how to build roads in towns. He even set up judges with the code of law to pass off judgment. He persuaded to find their homeland of Aslam. So again, I actually take it back. I think Moctezuma was pretty cool. I guess I forgot about this, but like I think Moctezuma was pretty cool. Like, he wasn't really too into war.
He's more into his roots, I guess.
The simulate was kind of but I guess I see what you're trying to do. Like, if there's not war, you still want to show your strength. So, like, do that. But the universal education, I feel like he gave everybody a chance to be something, you know, which is cool. He gave him that. He also was looking at, okay, this is what's going to grow my empire.
My people,
you know? My people are actually running this, so they need to know what they're doing. They need to, like, if there's any talents that they have or something, like, we would need that, you know? So I thought that was pretty cool.
I feel like he thought of them as, like, if my people aren't, like, mindless and just look at me to do something, and I'll just make them do stuff so that way I can have more minds to, like, think, you know?
Yeah.
Like, more minds, like, think alike. I don't know.
No, I get what you mean. So whenever he died, Moctezuma died, his son, Axiacatl, succeeded him. But he was more of like a powerhouse brute, you know, like, he wasn't really smart. That's sort of when the king started to die down. It started to decline. He wasn't the smartest, like I said. He was very big on military expansion. But he never got to surpass his father. Like, his father had done so much more than him, both expansion wise and sort of like innovation, sort of, you know?
Yeah.
So he also had conspiracies that there were people trying to go after him. So he sent his whole army to destroy the rebels, because at this point rebels were coming up.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to seem different. He didn't want to seem like weak or anything. So
it always comes down to that.
His whole army, bro, and he later waged war against the Tosican, who was another civilization like the Aztecs, who had a feudalistic government. They made weapons out of bronze. The 24,000 Aztec warriors were almost wiped out, preventing their expansion. And although that town was not as large, they almost wiped out 24,000 Aztec warriors, bro.
That bronze, bro. I mean, the Aztecs didn't have access to like gold or bronze, silver, none of that.
Not at that point. And the Aztecs were like, okay, damn, we got to go around them. Like, we can't. That's our border.
That's like, it's a high level. I can't go there yet.
Yeah, and like also that's sort of like stated where's that borderline, because during the Triple Alliance they're like, okay, well, the borderline was sort of like a gray area. They didn't know what it was until they found out about them. They're like, okay, we can't go past here, because it was mainly just empty lands and stuff. So they're like, okay, what can we pass now? So after that, the neighbors, because Axiatico, wait, that was his name, right? Yeah, Axiatico, he was desperate to gain his reputation back. He was very desperate, so he was throwing everything that he can at these battles. But he was failing. All those times he was just failing and failing, and so after finding out about the Aztecs' losses, because they were known to be these big powerhouse people. You can't go after them. You can't beat them,
Yeah.
But the neighbors started to hear, and they decided to start to rebel, to rebel. And over the coming years, more and more rebellions popped up. They were straining the military capabilities. Axiacatl, he left the empire, actually, in the state of weakness, where this is the most incompetent king of all Aztec history.
He just bailed?
He bailed. But the next king is even worse.
Oh.
So his brother, actually, comes into play, which is Tizok, and to show his strength, he wanted to seem strong.
Yeah.
He decided to put down a small rebellion in a town. It was a small little town. It should have been easy, but he lost that battle.
Just like that.
Just like that. He wasn't really into military expansion, nor was he smart.
Oh wow! He was only there for like 5 years.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah. So he really died under suspicious circumstances. Some people think he was poisoned.
Maybe.
Yeah.
They were probably like hating on him, and they're like, "Bro, just go to
poison
sleep.
Go
to sleep,
bro." So in 1486, he was actually succeeded by a man who was the opposite of him, a Huitziro. Mm-hmm. He was the youngest son of the Moctezuma the First. He developed new military strategies. He managed to actually destroy many rebellions, but new ones just kept on popping up. But he was destroying them. He was doing really well. His new military strategies were actually working. He was he was best remembered for the completion of the Grand Temple in the middle of Tenochtitlan, the one started by Moctezuma the First. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah. He was just happened to be there,
Yeah.
Hey.
Huitziro.
Hey.
You're a cool guy. So this is what I was telling you earlier, and this is actually so insane. So every single person was invited to the witness of the festivities of this achievement. It was a huge thing,
Yeah.
And you should, if you're listening right now, look at the Grand Temple in Tenochtitlan. It's really beautiful. It's huge. There's like long 2 stairways. At the top, there's like 2 shrines, one for the sun god and one for the rain god, if I'm not mistaken. And it's really cool. But actually, this event isn't. So there were long lines of enemies and slaves who would give themselves up, who would walk up the temple, and whenever they got to the top, they would have their hearts ripped out of their chest, and the blood would leak down the temple in vases, which was given to people to spray on their crops and homes to give back to the gods. So imagine that. And these lines were like miles long, like 4 miles long of just enemies there. Some slaves, you know. It was absolutely insane. It was insane.
I just wonder how like they process like while they're like in the back of the line, like what are we here for again? Like
yeah, I know.
Some kind of like riot or something. Like I don't know. I'm like, was that a head rolling down?
Why
Like
is that a head? Why is he walking out with no head?
That's just wild.
Man.
Like they're just literally walking to their
But
deaths.
again, like people really loved that stuff. Like people were really into it. They were really.
Some people accepted it.
Yeah.
But then there's also those enemies that were just kind of like that was their punishment. So they're just like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the Aztecs stated that there were about 80,400 people or like enemies who were slaughtered in the duration of 5 days. But crazy. Historians think that they were sort of like over exaggerating to like sort of put fear in their enemies. They were closer about to like 10 to 30,000, but still that's a lot of people, bro.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of people. And whenever Huitzil died in 1502, the empire was still in turmoil because of rebellions. So that's where Moctezuma II came about. And whenever he came in, there were already problems. Like it was already like, decreasing.
He was already like having a bad luck like set up for him.
Yeah, and it became sort of like after he came about, it became a vast empire. It was flourishing, you know. But the empire was corrupt by the nobles. You know, they took advantage of that stuff. So, you know, you were unable to stop these issues just because of how deep it was. You know, it was already way too late. Like, everything is corrupt and everyone is controlled by somebody. So, they wanted a new strategy to become more aggressive against rebels. So they wanted to become even stronger, you know? So they became more violent. More cities wanted to rebel in fear, because even if, like, you were a good guy or not, if you were conspired to be a bad guy, or, like, to be, like, a conspiracy theory or a theorist, or, like, fucking you're conspired against them sort of thing, like, you were killed. So a lot of people were really scared at that point. And there actually was a comet that appeared in the sky, which meant that there was doom. It was bad luck. So Moctezuma II was deeply, deeply frustrated and disturbed by the sign of the gods. So he decided to kill all of the high priests to predict this comet from coming.
Yeah, like it's like he almost knew that was like a demise, like sort of like bad omen, but he was like, no, it's not true, like kill all the priests because it's not true. Like, yeah,
like it's actually insane how he really thought that. Like, that was the thing to do, bro.
Yeah. But, like, that comment was almost kind of like a significant event that caused their demise, which is crazy. No matter how much you try to prevent it, and it's kind of what happened later on.
Like, there was doom to that, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, killing all of his high priests, like, that's such a huge thing. That's like if like, England, the king, decided to kill all of the popes, you know?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Instead of pure rage, just like...
Yeah, bro. So, like, after that, we arrive in 1519. All right, we're here, 1519, you know. There are more rebellions. There's more brutality. There have been, like, reports of strange ships in the sea. People are saying that there are mountains moving across the water. And the Aztecs thought, and this is what's been said, like, this is what's been written down in history, which, again, don't forget, the Spaniards wrote the history, because there are none about the Aztecs, so who else is going to write about this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
The Aztecs thought that the coming of the Spaniards were like alien invasions, or aliens arriving on Earth. So the Spaniards arrived on shore 1519 with their army ready to conquer. Seen as gods, they had armors and guns. But like I said, it was all wrong. It's propaganda. Like, it's truly not how they were seen.
But, like, on the surface, they're like, wow, like, oh my God, like, whoa.
Exactly. And the reason why they sort of said these things is because obviously the Spaniards wanted the Spaniards to look stronger. they truly believed that Christian people were to be superior. That's why they were thought of as gods, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And because the Aztecs and the Spanish honestly really didn't fully understand the country that they were at war with. They didn't really understand each other either. So the Spaniards didn't have a full army. So whenever they actually conquered, and I know I mentioned this earlier, but whenever they conquer, they have to get permission and like a permit from the king, of Europe, you know? They needed to get a permit. So they weren't given armies or anything like that. There were only people who were basically like ruthless businessmen. But there were also some commoners who wanted to get in some of the shares. There were traders as well. So in order to win, they had to form alliances. They had to, get good with the people around, and like I said, form alliances. And they really didn't have that great of weapons at this point yet. Although they did have some guns, but it weren't like, too advanced.
Yeah.
So, after finding out about a place called the Land of Gold, the Crown of Spain sent a man. Here we go. Hernan Cortés.
Mm-hmm.
That dude. To find out about the place. So, he wanted to conquer that land because, it would mean that, okay, so I take this land and it's automatically... I'm going to be king, that was his thought. Like, I'm automatically going to be king and it's going to be mine, So setting sail, he had 11 ships, about 630 people, but most of them were not warriors at all. He had recently made made allies with Cuba again, who were a few hundred of the soldiers there. So what he first did was he went to look for translators. That was his first thing, like, I need translators to be able to speak with people.
Yeah.
So we are going to pause that story and we're going to take a trip back. We're going to go back years before that Spanish exploration. So there were more Spaniards who actually shipwrecked in a Mayan territory. So whenever they were shipwrecked, they were taken as prisoners, slaves. They ultimately achieved great ranks. They married Mayan women, and they were the first to make a half European, half Mayan child.
Huh.
So they also fought against, Spanish and Spaniards who tried to come onto their land. So they were full on, Mayan. They really were for them. So whenever Cortez went over, I guess he's like a really good sweet talker. He's a good businessman. So they decided to go with him and, be his translators. But because they could translate Spanish to Mayan. Even a slave woman who could translate Mayan to Aztec, that language, she would eventually learn Spanish and become Cortez's wife. So, what they did was they started to go straight on to where the Aztecs were. Yeah. They were making alliances with the rebels. What else are you going to do? You know what I mean? Those people are already against Aztecs. It's the smartest thing to do, So what they did was they joined because they wanted to get away of the brutal ways of the Aztecs. Everybody was getting murdered. Everybody was like, if you looked at them weird, if you're like doing anything suspicious, you are dying, So Amakatazuma II was aware of the Spaniards, but he didn't worry too much of them because there were other things that he felt he needed to worry about. All these other rebels, Hernan Cortés was nothing to him,
Yeah.
So what he did was he headed straight to Tenochtitlan to see the city for himself before he conquered it. So Cortés then was in a close city by Tenochtitlan to stake it out, and Cortés became surrounded by Aztecs. So he was 3 days in battle, but that was sort of like an outside city. It wasn't the Aztecs that he thought. It was an outside city who realized that Cortés wasn't Aztecs. So they became allies, actually, to wipe out the brutal Aztecs.
Is that the Chaclan people?
Yeah, I don't know who it was specifically, but it might have been because, like...
I think that's what it was. I think I saw the Chaclan fought alongside the Spain, and those are the people that founded the tortillas and the maize and stuff like that.
Nice.
It's crazy.
That's where I was, because I didn't find anything about like the
Yeah,
tortillas.
I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. Chaclan people. I don't know.
The Coaloquan or
Yes, maybe something like that. Yeah, but yeah, that's. I guess he just magically got lucky and fell into the right land.
yeah, no, for sure. And then they're just like, wait, you're not Aztec.
Yeah.
You know. So
They're like, oh, we hate them too. Like,
yeah. There are 3 days in battle, man. So what then would happen is that Moctezuma would then send gold to push them away for taking over. They sent gold to Hernan Cortés, but this only convinced the Spaniards that they actually were rich.
that they had more.
They're like, oh, they haven't. They can
that
give
was
it
kind
away.
of a dumb move. Like,
Dumb move by
that
Moctezuma.
was-
Like the
yeah.
second, come on, man. So they're like, we want more. We're like,
We
want
know
more
you
of
have a
this.
shit ton if
Because
you're just gonna gift us this little bit.
exactly, because so the thing about them is that they had no idea about what value of gold was.
Yeah,
they didn't know what you could
currency
make.
and
There wasn't
stuff.
like the currency of it all. Like they had value, and that's what they were very confused about the Spaniards. They were like, so why are y'all so worried, or why are y'all like so obsessed with? They had no idea.
They just thought of it as like a kind gesture. They're like, oh, it's gold.
Exactly, and like see,
Shiny.
they had value in chocolate because there was value in that.
Yeah,
they could
chocolate's
eat it.
wild.
That was a currency for Mayans. But I have some facts of that actually, but we'll get to that later. But they were just very confused with the Spaniards' way of thinking about gold.
Yeah, that's kind of what kind of messed them up too.
So heading closer to the capital, they camped close by in Chalalua. So what they did was they sent their temples on fire. They killed the nobility, and they wanted to make themselves look strong. Again, it's all about what people think of you in these times. Like if they need to think that you're strong. So what Moctezuma did was he invited Cortés to the Tenochtitlan to meet the empire themselves. At this point, there are floods in Tenochtitlan. So what they did was they built dams, expanding the empire, which held 250,000 people by now.
That's crazy because it was like 1452. The city was flooded and was filled with starvation and famine. So they were just full on like on the brink. They were like
At that point, yeah.
Yeah, like
Rebels. So they decided to build dams, which was cool because that even brought more people in.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did was they were actually connecting into the mainlands with causeways, like large bridges.
Yeah.
So when they met there was already a huge communication problem between the two. Cortés hugged the king, but at that point touching the king was illegal, so the emperor restrained. And the king gave Cortés a gift, and in their culture a gift was returned for equals. And Cortés didn't give one back, so it was an insult against the Aztecs. And I think I honestly believe that I don't know what Moctezuma was thinking the second. Like I really don't know what he was thinking. He seemed like a pushover.
Yeah,
he
didn't know what he was up against, basically.
And he was just letting this stuff happen. Like I don't know. I wasn't really too with it.
I feel like he thought that it was just like a common day for him, but he didn't know that like these people had different mindsets, like you said, with currency, like power and lands. But he was like,
exactly,
just like some random weird people, like whatever.
It was just like, I feel like he was taking too much. And so what he allowed them to do was to stay in his father's temple. So later on, Cortés was able to find a room full of gold. And he planned to steal it, but not then and there. Like, he needed a time. He needed a right place. He was going to plan it all. And they also asked to put a picture of the Virgin Mary and a cross in their temple.
Wow.
That is so crazy. And that's just sort of like, that's just like a huge thing. Like, it's just, in that time too, especially, it's just like a big gesture. So that made the Aztecs very angry.
They're like, what?
Yeah, so they said no. They denied them. And the Aztecs actually killed some of the Spaniards in Veracruz. And I didn't really know why or anything. I think they just like...
Pure rage or something like that.
Pure rage. Yeah, so the Spanish actually responded by holding the emperor hostage, which was Moctezuma.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the first week of them being there.
Yeah.
All of this happened. There was real beef. So, so while the Aztecs wanted to run the Spaniards away, the king was scared that they would kill him and replace him. So for 6 months, he was the puppet king to Cortez. Cortez. How insane is that?
Yeah.
And the Aztecs had no understanding as to why the Spaniards wanted gold. Like I said, there's no currency, no value in it. So Cortez actually never, like I said earlier, Cortez never actually got the permit from the crown to conquer anything. So they sent an expedition to bring Cortez back. So what he decided to do was he had to leave Tenochtitlan to solve this issue, and he took his most disciplined soldiers and leaving the lesser ones behind, the incompetent ones.
Well,
And this led to the remaining Spanish soldiers massacring thousands of unarmed Aztec nobles. People gathered around the temple that they were, and where the Spanish were, and they started to siege inside of it all, like just siege it all. And I get it, dude. Like, why would the Spaniards do that? It's just so crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane. And the fact that Moctezuma would stay as like a puppet for 6 months.
It was just like he didn't think straight.
He's weak.
He was basically weak and confused.
Yeah.
He was like, I don't know.
So this was a thing that was very different in this time, which was they chose a new king while there was a king in play already. Mm-hmm. And what they did was they chose his brother, Cuitlahuac.
Yeah.
Cuitlahuac. And Moctezuma then made a speech about letting the Spaniards go in peace. But the Aztecs obviously didn't like that. Their whole base of choosing a king was a strong, powered person. Yes. Mm-hmm. So this was completely different. This was like something that they didn't like at all.
What is this dude doing?
What is he talking about? You know, like, so
throwing tomatoes at him.
He died later that night. Nobody knows how, but he died that night.
Yeah.
And also, again, later that night, the Spanish escaped with the gold, and whenever they were found, they had to fight through some of the people there, the Spaniards or the Aztec people, and most of them were found dead or they drowned. So Cuitlahuac wasn't as diplomatic as the king before, though. Mm. He attacked the remaining Spaniards until they went to Tlaxcala, which then the Spanish began to prepare an invasion for Tenochtitlan. The Spanish had forces from Cuba, which was 100,000, also 100,000 soldiers from Tlaxcala, and various Aztec tribes around. Cortez also convinced everyone else to remain neutral so that they wouldn't, fight for or against if they weren't for anything,
Yeah.
So the empire started to actually deal with the smallpox, which then killed like tens of thousands of people, which also the emperor.
That same year, right?
Yeah, and it was just like a huge disease that didn't help their fight also. They lost a lot of people. So the next emperor, which was Cuauhtémoc, fought various battles. They won some, they lost some. He was nothing too crazy. Like the Spanish actually slowly conquered, which was surrounding the Aztecs, making Texcoco their base, which is where the Spanish burned their libraries to the ground. Remember earlier I said that like a Spaniard burned the remaining ones? Well, it's Cortez. So he burned all their libraries to the ground, keeping their origins a mystery. So, and it's crazy because the siege of Tenochtitlan, whenever they surrounded them, that siege lasted for 8 months. 8 months. They had boats, bullets, cannons. They made shifts. They blocked their trade routes. They pushed the Aztecs back. And the thing was, so those causeways, they were very thin. They were very thin. At first, there was only a couple people that could fight in a line. It was like two in a row or like three people that can be next to each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they were scared that like the Aztecs would have canoes coming from the side, which they did. They had those for a while until they were able to make their own shafts and go through another way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it lasted 8 months. Again,
because they still had that like high ground of their territory.
Yeah,
still.
And they pushed them back. They were fighting everywhere they needed. Their homes, the temple, like everywhere.
Yeah.
And they never ever surrendered. Never surrendered. And they were then defeated. There was an estimated of 100 to 240,000 people dead. At that point, it was renamed Mexico City, and the emperor was tortured and then executed. So at that point, Spaniards took over everything. They made neighboring cities pay taxes. People did stop being sacrificed.
Yep.
Cortez definitely did stop that because that wasn't a way of what he didn't see that because he witnessed the people of Tenochtitlan sacrifice a lot of people. So they're like, oh, like that's just not the way that we do it.
That's not the holy way,
Exactly, man. But they did take away universal education real fast.
Yeah.
And they changed it to actually, Bible education. And it was only for the high social class. No lower classmen were allowed to, take that,
Damn.
And that was really that just sucks.
That's just like the fall right there.
But that is the Aztec Empire.
Yeah.
I do have a couple more things. I have a like daily life of a regular person, sort of like their inventions that they've had, torturing punishment techniques, which I didn't find much, but we'll go into that. And then I did a couple gods, and then sort of like extra facts. So, I guess, do you have anything that you want to add about that, or should we just jump into like the daily life of a regular person? Anything you want to add about the story?
No, you basically like wrapped it up pretty well. That little interesting thing that got me like wondering about the Spanish side was this guy Bernal Diaz del Castillo, and he was one of the soldiers to conquer the Aztec Empire alongside Cortez. But he wrote a book about his experiences, which he saw how advanced the civilization was and how cruel they were, but also how cruel the Spanish were. So he was kind of just like that middle guy that was just like witnessing like just the tranquility of wars, like what's going on.
Yeah.
And like both of you are wrong, and I'm gonna write this book.
Like this is what happened. Like this is how it was,
Yeah.
And I think you told me something about Hernan Cortez, like how he was ugly or something. Or...
Yeah, like his parents thought he was gonna die when he was a baby because he was so pale and so ugly. So they just kind of let him be until finally he was a teenager, and they're like, "Oh, he's not gonna die. He's fine."
He's alright.
So they low-key just like dissed their son until he was like
his ugly ass is still alive.
Finally, like intelligent, I guess. And
yeah.
Like, oh, okay, cool.
Crazy. They were brutal back then, man.
No, for real, Spaniards are like.
But okay, I mean, going off into like the daily life of a regular person, there was 4 classes of citizens. So there was the warrior, the commoner, the noble, and the priest. So the warriors had actually 4 jobs. They were to intimidate anybody in the empire, stay loyal, and put down any rebellion, and to conquer new territories. In return, they would actually receive land for service. So, and that was a really big thing for, feudalism. There was, the more land you conquer, the more you're able to give to your people. Right. So it was like expansion was a huge thing, which came full circle, And then there was the commoner, the regular people worked on land of others. The higher ups, the priests, the nobles, the warriors, they worked on their lands. They were the least privileged. They produced most of the goods, though. They're producing everything, man. I'm telling you, like they universal education. Yeah. They were flourishing in good produce goods. There was no plague, so there was a lot of them. They were just going and going and going. This helped with like the expansion. We're having all these people, but we need to expand to be able to have this large agricultural
good mindset on
system.
that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then after them is the noble. So those are the rulers, the rich. They act like witches, man. Very obnoxious, just gaining from the expansion, honestly. They focused on growing the empire, and they also tried to control the kings. Again,
the little like pouring poison in the ear type guy.
Exactly, like, oh, you should do this. Especially if they weren't intelligent, they definitely tried to control them.
The younger ones and stuff, like you said.
Exactly.
Definitely.
So there was also the priest. So they weren't really favoring expansion. They just demanded more human sacrifices. Honestly, that was just their thing. Bring me hearts. That's it. They wanted to sacrifice.
You know what's crazy is that I was going over the games too, what they went through, and one of them was like Ula Matsuli. This was like using a rubber ball with their hips and stuff to get to the stuff. But like on the category of games is also human sacrifice. Like they were just like, that's a sport. Like,
yeah.
And it's also like in like Apocalypto, and like they have like nets in the bottom and they're like celebrating.
Yeah, true. Like, it was like a festival thing. Also, you know what was a game to them? War.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to kill people. They were trying to see who can gather the most
heads.
No, who can gather the most captures. Oh. People to come take them back. Who can they capture the most enemies, They weren't trying to kill them. They were trying to bring them back and just make a game out of it. Obviously, it's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
But like, who could just catch the most? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually intense. Yeah. I would be scared.
No, for real.
So Aztecs were actually either hunters, gatherers, or farmers. So children and slaves, they all had to go to school again with that universal education. Boys and girls would learn different things. For example, boys would learn to hunt and farm, whereas the girls would learn to cook and do household duties. Slaves were no captures. They were actually sacrificed, most on like of their free will. It was like a big thing that they wanted to do, give to the gods. They were actually Aztecs. There were no outside people. They were just Aztecs, and they were usually slaves because they had committed a crime and they chose to serve their punishment as a slave, because they would, other than that, they would die. They're like, right. Nah, I don't want to die. You know what I mean? Or if your family were in debt and they gave you up as a slave. So once you're a slave, though, if your punishment is up, you're not a slave no more. If the debt is paid, you're not a slave no more. And your kids don't become slaves either. And you can also do like you can do free things, like you can marry a free woman. You can marry another slave. So it wasn't like, I guess, like slaves overall, no, not cool at all. But like it just was different than the way that we think of slaves,
Yeah.
Like in that time of history, which is just like insane. But that's sort of like, I try to look for things if like the common people were happy or not. I couldn't find anything. No. And I assume that they would be. I think when they were flourishing.
You gotta imagine their mindsets though, like in their house, they're like, all right, I'm gonna just continue doing my duties, and if I don't do well, then I'm gonna get sacrificed from the gods. Or I think they were definitely feared by the gods a lot, and just kind of like used that to put their children on check. Or
for sure. Like if you don't do this, I most definitely agree with you. I think that fear was definitely a thing in there.
Very disciplined, I guess.
Especially whenever the Aztecs were at the point when they were weak, and there were a bunch of rebellions. So I wouldn't doubt it.
Definitely all like warriors, all of them.
Yeah. Now we're moving on to inventions, man. Inventions are pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. There are definitely some of them that I want to. I wish I could see in person, but this first one is gonna be chocolate. So Aztecs and Mayans actually both take credit for introducing chocolate. So for the Mayans, chocolate was used as currency, like I said before. Aztecs used the cocoa bean to make bitter water, which was similar to brew prepared to the Mayans. But it was just like hot chocolate, honestly, ultimately. But then the Spanish later on would add sugar to that, making it much better, like making it the hot chocolate that we know now. Wow. Improving from like that bitter, spicy drink. They also introduced medicine, which was sort of like a herbal remedy used today to ease insomnia, epilepsy, high blood pressure, dating all the way back to the Aztec Empire. The passion flower was used by the Aztecs as medication to calm spasms and relax muscles. Some believe that this was used during surgery. Also, the calendar. Time was measured by the Aztecs through a calendar wheel. So the Aztecs used several calendars. There's a bunch of them. But the one of them is the current system of 365 days in a year. This calendar was broken up into several 18-day months and 5 leftover days at the end of the year, where they believed that spirits would roam freely during those 5 days.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That we still go by to that, you know?
Yeah. Also, gum. The Spanish word for chewing gum is chicle, which traces back to the Mayan and Aztec cultures. The Mayans discovered a process to convert the thick, milky liquid from sapodilla trees into a hard chewing gum. That liquid was called chicle. When the conquerors arrived, Aztec prostitutes were chewing gum on street corners. Chicle quickly fell out of favor when Spanish destroyed the trade routes, but later became revived 350 years later.
Damn.
Let's take it back there. Aztec prostitutes? I never thought of that. That's insane.
Yeah. Like, it's chewing gum in the streets, you know.
That's insane.
Looking fine.
Okay, so this next one is actually pretty interesting. It's called the Aztec death whistle.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
If you're listening to this, you should definitely look up a YouTube video.
It sounds horrifying.
It is crazy. Have you heard it before?
I heard it before. It is.
You know what? I wonder if I could play it right now.
Yeah, dude. It's like something that you don't want to hear before you die, basically.
Oh, man. It is. It's insane, dude. It's really insane. And it sounds very scary. And the interesting thing about this is that, like, many people would, many of the Aztec warriors would do this at the same time as they're running into battle. Okay, we're gonna see if this works. All right. This might be a little bit of a, I guess, how would you call it? Like a jump scare, sort of. Like, it's very, very scary. So it's just a warning here. Might be a little loud. I'm not trying not to be too loud, but here.
Very unique instrument. We call the death whistle. The death whistle the Aztec use for special ceremonies, for Day of the Dead celebration, and also they use when they have a war, when they fight with other tribes.
Skip ahead.
Instruments, and it's very unique. So this is the death whistle.
That was insane. That's so terrifying. And it was used in battles. Like, hundreds of them would use that, you know? And that shit would scare the shit out of me. That would scare me so bad.
No, it really sounds like women dying, screaming, or something like that.
Yes, like so viciously.
Like they're on fire or dying.
Yeah.
Business.
So that was crazy. I wonder how they made that. If you want, you can look at a picture. It's really just a skull. I don't know how they make that sound. But moving on to torturing or punishment techniques, just like because during this time the Middle Ages were a thing. Just like their neighbors, I mean, they weren't like their neighbors at all. They were opposite, actually. They didn't really have any techniques.
Torture in common.
They weren't really torturous. They just sort of fed hearts to their god. That's torturous itself, but like they weren't really experimental or anything. Just like
the medieval kind.
The medieval time.
Yeah, they would like literally stretch you out and stuff. But like Aztecs, I feel like we're just
trying to get the heart.
Yeah.
So that I didn't get really anything except just the fact that they would sacrifice them, open up their chest, and rip the pumping heart out. But moving on to gods, they actually served like 200 plus gods over time. So I'm just gonna do like sort of like the big three that made them do certain things, which were really crazy. But the first one is the rain god, and that name is Tlaloc. And that god needed tears, so they would beat a child or a person in front of their friends and family. And when the child and loved ones cried so much, the child would then be drowned. So those tears would bring the rain. So brutal, man. The next one is the fertility god, and that one is called Xochitlic. Yeah, Xochitlic. And if you were a woman and looked like the fertility god, the priest would get you drunk, so you could dance your way to the nearest temple and then remove your head. So that blood that came from the head would then fertilize the crops. Oh my gosh! And there's the fire god. This one's a little hard to say. Zutek Guto. So that one needed sacrifices. So they would get the people drugged. They would tie them up and throw them in a fire. When they were crisp but still alive, they would get removed, and they would get their heart taken out.
Wow.
That's so crazy. That's too painful, man.
So they would barbecue them while they're still alive, and then take their like brisket heart out.
Yeah.
Barbecue sauce.
Yeah, a little bit.
Damn. What the hell? I didn't know.
Insane.
I didn't know they went that far. That's
they
crazy.
went pretty far, man.
Bring them out. Well done.
Yeah.
Damn.
And then with alien connections, like we said earlier, man, like I don't think aliens had anything to do. I feel like they were evolutionized and advanced in themselves to build those structures. You know.
Yeah.
We could look. I mean, next time we do another era, like maybe Egyptians. You know, I'll hear your argument against that, but I personally still don't think.
I definitely
either.
think Egyptians.
But I think Egyptians, there's more conspiracy to that.
Definitely.
Okay, but before we get to the extra facts in the end of the episode, we're gonna take one last break, and we'll be back with the facts. Some pretty interesting facts. We'll be back. All right, and we are back, and wasting no time. We're gonna start off with some cool, interesting facts just about the time. I don't think they're like crazy, but it's just like, wow, you know. But in school, they focused on math and astronomy, which gave them the idea of being able to be able to predict big events and to create those complex structures. Their combat became more of a game. Oh, I don't know if I said this on. Did I say this on the podcast? I don't know. But they became a game who can capture the most enemies rather than killing them on battlefield. I think we did say that here.
Yeah.
There were over 200 deities within their pantheon. I hope I said that right. They were advanced in architecture, art, and astronomy. The Aztec society placed great emphasis on skilled masonry and intricate stonework, which is a regular feature in many of their buildings. And the Aztecs were the first to celebrate the Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
I
guess that's also where that death whistle comes into play.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. Overall, man, how do you feel about the Aztecs?
I feel like the Aztecs, like, it looks like in the beginning, like they had like a really good start, and like the universe was like, we're all there for you. We're gonna help you find your land. You're gonna be your own spot. But then, like you like called it, like in the middle, they just kind of gave up on that old like trait where they used to like worship the gods and stuff, and they became their own like people, and that kind of backfired and made them like fall like crazy, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
But like laying it out like that, it's like you see the roller coaster and like them just
everything that they went through, and they were at first they were definitely the underdog.
Yeah,
having to pay those taxes, going from home to home. They didn't have to be beefing with everybody though.
Right,
100%. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to do that to the king's daughter. Like, why
did
they
the whole
do that?
Skin, like,
that's just cruel, man. But they were definitely the underdog. They allied their way up into a dominant force. Some of their kings were great, others were terrible. But eventually, disease from the Spaniards conquered them. The Spaniards' weaponry conquered them. So, and they were very, very brutal. And I don't think anybody deserves to be colonized. That definitely is just the way of their giving to, you know, I guess their god.
Yeah.
But they were very, very brutal. You know, very brutal. But yeah, man. Do you have anything that you want to add to the Aztec Empire? Any other fact before we head to our fact of the day?
Not for the Aztecs. I mean, the Aztecs, they kind of laid everything out there. They're really
pretty crazy, right?
Pretty badass. Yeah, not gonna lie.
All right. Well, actually, before we head to the fact of the day, my last episode, surviving an apocalypse, we got a response from that. So we're gonna read it out from Wicked Joltian. So what he said was that y'all should check out DayZ, amazing game. Open world survival where you can either work with others or fight them, plus the zombies and wildlife. I think alien invasion would be the scariest apocalypse.
Yeah,
wow.
Definitely.
Have you ever played DayZ?
No, but I've seen a lot of clips where it's like open mic chat, proximity chat.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of funny clips of them.
For sure. No, that seems really cool. I've never played it or anything. I definitely got to check out some of the clips.
Get that. I feel like it's not that expensive now. It used to be.
No, I doubt it. Yeah. Okay, but for you, what kind of invasion would be the scariest for you? There's like alien invasion, world killer asteroid, chemical warfare, zombies.
I honestly feel like not zombies, not aliens, but like iRobot type shit. Like
with robots?
Robots overcoming, because those things are crazy. Like, I don't know.
Wow.
Because like it's what we use like everywhere. Like it can easily just turn on you.
So crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Adapting really well too.
Yeah, and it's like when we least expect it to.
Yeah. Thank you, Wicked Joltian, for sending in that response. But moving on to our fact of the day, man. Do you want to go ahead and read yours first?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty short but funny. I don't know if anybody knows this, but like Vikings shower every Saturday. They don't bathe until Saturday.
They never miss a Saturday.
No,
that's the day.
That was their like holy day that their mothers and wives would tell them that's when you got to shower because I can't take you any longer.
Damn, that's interesting. You say it's your day off. Get cleaned.
Get in the tub.
Dirty boy. All right, my fact is that sloths have more neck bones than giraffes. Despite the differences in neck length, there are more bones in the neck of a sloth than a giraffe. There are 7 vertebrae in the neck of a giraffe and in most mammals, but there are 10 in the sloths. So while they're on your mind here... Oh, sorry. Just ignore I said that. But yeah, interesting, right?
That is pretty sick.
Crazy.
Would have thought. Just looking on the surface, you're like, oh, it's probably a giraffe.
For sure.
Like,
but it's a whole sloth. God.
Sid the sloth. That's wild.
But man, I really appreciate you coming out here doing another episode, a crazy, awesome episode. I hope you enjoyed it, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Definitely. We're going to have you on some other ones for sure. We definitely have some in the work. Our next episode is going to be pretty cool. We're going to do another all about matchups nature. Again, we're just going to have our animals go up against each other and decide which animal would win, which come out the conqueror. Definitely. And it's cool because you learn a lot about the animals. Learn a lot. It's one of my favorite episodes to do.
Yeah, I really like just going through the process, looking at
for sure
and stuff. Because like a lot of people just see it and they're like, whatever. But then when you like look deep into the animal, you
find out some cool things, dude. Whoa. Like this animal can do this. Like
I swear, the armadillo. Like ever since I listened to the armadillo one, I'm like, animals are crazy. You know?
Oh, dude, that's just one of the episodes just that I want to do. Yeah, just one, man. Like there are more. If you haven't checked out the armadillo episode, go ahead and check it out. That's a really, really informative episode. I think it was really cool. And the fact of the day at the end of that episode. Don't say nothing, but check it out, man. It's really cool. Again, animals are just crazy.
Yep.
But I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen. If you could just leave a like or a quick follow if you enjoyed the episode. And if you want to be cool like Wicked Joltian, send an email to allaboutnothing21@gmail.com. Send in any questions, just response to the episode, or just any topic that you just want to hear me talk about. Again, that's allaboutnothing21@gmail.com. And I have a Twitch where I sometimes stream Overwatch 2, Fortnite, and many more at CJAYY99. Again, that's CJAYY99. So go ahead and check out some cool gameplay. And once again, don't forget to treat someone with kindness. Thank you.